Heine from Stormbringer magazine. We're in the private studio of Devon Graves, and we're talking today about his newest band, newest project, the Shadow Theory. But before we talk about the Shadow Theory, let's talk about the end of Dead Soul Tribe, because it looks like that after the last album, 2007, you put Dead Soul Tribe aside and you now concentrate on other projects.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing Dead Soul for almost, 9 years, almost 10 years. And, along the way, I intended Dead Soul to be kind of like an alt metal band, alternative. I was trying to do something a little more mainstream after coming out of Psychotic Waltz. And what happened is that we maintained in the prog genre anyway. And I picked these guys for playing in the band, really to play live, because I did the albums alone, except Adel, who was on the albums, the drummer. But I picked the other two guys just to so I can have a live unit, And I wasn't real picky about the musicianship, I wanted people that had the right presence live. I was making a live band. I wanted something entertaining, I'm not really into the prog way of performance, the guitar way up here and perfect playing but emotionless is what I see across the board on a lot of bands like that. And that's not what entertains me. And I like kind of the Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Ritchie Blackmore school of performance, So I picked players for their stage appeal, and but they were more the kind of like punk rock, alt rock kind of players, And there I am. No matter what I'm trying to do with music, I'm stuck in the prog genre. I'm touring with prog bands. I'm on a prog label. That's just where I ended up. So I took a lot of criticism for picking guys like this, because they weren't really up to this technical task. And I stuck with them for a long time. I didn't, I was, like I said, I was trying to do something a little different, but I started to wonder, we started to kind of climb up the ladder anyway. We started opening up festivals, and when we ended, we were pretty much headlining, almost headlining, headlining. We climbed up, but I just wondered what it would be like if all the criticism could be removed. What would it be like if I had players that were really up to the task? And the thing is that they still had to be up to my tastes also. They have to be strong performers, And when I was touring with Dead Soul, especially on the Murder of Crows tour, that was when I met Arnie, the guitar player for the Shadow Theory. And that was the first, like, I don't know if you could call him a prog guitar player, but he certainly got the chops of one. He's more of a thrash metal guy, but he's very technical. But he also had this real strong performance, real passionate performance. Has a slightly longer guitar strap than most of your prog players and stuff. Little things like that matter, And that's what kind of made me start to wonder what would it be like if I had, players like this. And when, on the following year, when we toured with Threshold, I met Johann James. And that's when I started to get serious about this idea. I thought, man, I always liked Adel. I liked having him in the band. I really love him as a friend. And I really like his drumming, and I like his performing. That's why I chose him. But Johann was just a considerable step higher, in my opinion. And wow, that's when I started actually initiating making this band. So like this end of Dead Soul Tribe was kind of forming ever since the early days. It was kind of slowly happening. And I got an email from this Demi Scott, and this is, yeah, and he he wrote me a fan mail, and saying like, oh, I love Psychotic Waltz, I like Dead Soul Tribe, but I'm a professional musician, but I'm considering just quitting the business because I'm fed up with it and disillusioned with it and stuff. And he said, I hope you don't mind, but I'm writing to you because I would like to ask your advice. And I said, well, send me your music. I'll tell you if you should stop.
Or not.
And yeah, a couple days later, I got a CD in the mail, and I listened to it in this very room. And I was really blown away. So blown away, I didn't even finish. There was 50 songs on there. I didn't even finish the whole thing. About halfway through, I went and wrote him an email and said, here's my advice. You should come to Austria and make a band with me. And so when we made this contact, and then I put him in contact with Arnie. And that's when this really started to become a reality, not just an idea, but really started to happen. But still, I had would probably be making 3 more Dead Soul Tribe albums, at least 2 more, but probably 3 more. So this is why it took so long for it to come to fruition. I was making a living with Dead Soul Tribe. I was making my living just off the record advances. And I couldn't really afford to stop the momentum. I was always behind my deadline, so I could never afford the time to get my hands on the Shadow Theory, as it would later be known. But they kept sending me material. Just kept sending it, and Demi and Arnie would collaborate together, and would just add up. I probably had 200 songs by the end.
It's different with Dead Soul Tribe, because as far as I know, Dead Soul Tribe, you wrote all the music, you wrote all the lyrics, and now you mentioned that Arnie and Demi were putting the material together. So is it not what some might have expected, a Devon Graves solo record? It is a band record, and it's written by the band.
Right. Well, it wouldn't have made sense for me to like recreate Dead Soul Tribe and get all these top-notch players just to play my music, because my music doesn't require a top-notch player. It just requires somebody with rhythm and with a little bit of skill, and you can play a Dead Soul Tribe song, I think. But the idea was now, okay, I did 5 albums with Dead Soul Tribe, and I made this solo project, Dead Soul Tribe, because I had been in Psychotic Waltz for 11 years, and I was really ambitious as a songwriter, but I didn't have very much opportunity to create music from the ground up and really see my ideas through. You're in a group with other guys, and you start to bring an idea forward, and everybody else starts putting their ideas in, and that's how bands work, and that's how we did work. But it did start to frustrate me to a point that I could never realize the idea from within, and just bring it out before people start changing things. And I need to be able to demonstrate it in its entirety first. And since I can't like write music, the written style, I need recording equipment, multi-track gear to lay all these ideas down. That and a lot of time. And so yeah, I parted from Psychotic Waltz to explore this within myself and get all this out. Now, 5 albums down the road, I should say that I pretty much wrung myself out. At least, I could write different styles of music and go into other things and experiment, but I was really trying to do something specific with Dead Soul Tribe, create a sound and go with that sound and develop it and try to bring something into rock that wasn't there. But in the end, I just pretty much said, as far as this goes, I feel I've said my piece. I haven't even had the desire anymore to pick up a guitar and make a new song. I've just kind of had my fill, and looked forward to a collaborative effort once again. And when, I start working with Demi and Arnie, and they're bringing some music that I could have never created on my own, and they're bringing it so quickly. that it really makes my job so much easier now, you know, and now I can put all this effort and concentration just into my vocal parts. And once I got comfortable with that, now the idea of doing another Dead Soul Tribe album just seems like a huge amount of work that I just don't have a desire to do right now. I don't know if I'll always feel that way, but I feel that way now. And yeah, so I guess I never really would say these decisions are permanent. You know, if there is a demand for Dead Soul Tribe, and if that starts to become obvious, I would be happy to jam with those guys again and do another album or what have you, you know. But I just have a feeling that when the Shadow Theory comes out, that, well, this was part of my hesitation for putting the Shadow Theory together when I was making my living with Dead Soul Tribe. I thought if I make such a good band that maybe Dead Soul Tribe will become obsolete, you know. And that was a fear of mine. But now I'm kind of ready to kind of accept that as maybe that's going to be the case. And so I just put Dead Soul Tribe off to the back burner. I told those guys that I'm going to be spending a couple of years doing this. And yeah, I had the intention of coming back with it, but the reality is that I will bring it back if there's a demand for it. You know, I have a feeling that there's probably a brighter future with the Shadow Theory and working with these other guys.
I found a really funny part in your promo sheet of the new album. The record company says, so like Dr. Frankenstein did by sewing the greatest, strongest pieces of the greatest, strongest man and add a sick and demented brain to create his monster, so it is the same with Devon's creation of his monster, the Shadow Theory. What makes me wonder if your record company meant that you are the sick and demented brain.
Well, actually, I'm the one that wrote that.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
They asked me to write a bio, so I always, you know, I try to make it something colorful. Even at my own expense.
Yeah. Now the new album is diversified, very diversified. I hear really some King Diamond parts in it. It is psychedelic, it's folk a little bit, but some of the guitar riffs, especially the groovy one from Arnie, they remind me on some records like Bleeding or Mosquito. Could you agree with that?
Well, I don't know. I think that there has to be some influence because he's a big fan of Psychotic Waltz. But I don't hear the similarities as much as I hear the differences. Now, I couldn't. We're very similar art form, but at the same time very different. Arnie, if I were to kind of dissect his style, I would say that he uses these huge intervals in his riffs. And this is something I've noticed when I saw him playing with his band. It gives him a very unique sound. Yeah, Complex 7. It gives him a very unique sound because, you know, most of us are playing... maybe I can give you a demonstration of what I'm talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, Devon Graves on guitar.
I'm not here to blow your mind with my guitar playing, but just make a point. Like, even in Psychotic Waltz, we took very small intervals in playing, like... just small spaces. Taking these small steps. And Arnie is more like... Okay, Arnie, forgive me. I'm not quoting him in any way musically, but I'm just trying to demonstrate that from note to note he takes a very large space. And it makes a very... new sound. I mean, in a style of music that's been around for about 20 or 30 years, it's very challenging to find a new way to do it, and that was something I noticed about him and why I wanted to bring him into what I do. It's very refreshing.
Yeah, I can imagine. The Shadow Theory is what we call a multi-culti band. You said Johan, he's from England, you have Dami from Greece, you have Arne from Germany. We haven't talked about Christopher. He's from Sweden. So makes me wonder, did you record all here in Austria? Did you bring the guys here and then record the whole album here?
Yeah, except Chris recorded his parts at home. He just had to plug into an interface, so he didn't need to necessarily fly here to do that. Actually, he was doing his tracks at home simultaneously while I had Johan here. And that was one of the amazing things is like Johan is playing to a programmed bass line on a keyboard, you know, and Chris is playing to programmed drum parts. Now, when they each do their own parts, they embellish it their own way, you know. But it's amazing how it just locked right together. You know, I go downstairs and get an email from Chris and take up some files and just throw them into the mix, and it just lines up like these two guys were in the same room. You know, amazing.
It took a long time in the making of Behind the Black Wheel. What makes me wonder, where did from the composition, how did this work when Arnie and Demi, they were not together when composing? So did this all work over the internet?
Yeah. And what really took so long, it wasn't the composing or the recording of the album. It was like I said before, just me finding the time to really devote myself to this, because I didn't want to just do it on weekends or do it on little breaks between like a tour of Dead Soul Tribe and the next album or whatever, but I wanted everything else cleaned off the slate and just to concentrate on this. And it took me several years, 3, maybe 4 years, just to even get to this point. And during those years, it wasn't wasted time for those guys. They would write together over email. And an interesting thing about Demi is that this guy is he's got such an agile mind for composition. He's got really wide influences, and he listens to like metal, black metal, jazz, classical. He really is a wealth of real musical knowledge. He can listen to drum rhythms, ethnic drum rhythms, and tell you exactly the origins of this rhythm. And so he's very educated. And but he's also very agile. And what I mean by that is, like, when I put him in contact with Arnie, and he started to hear Arnie's style, then he starts to write songs that sound like Arnie might have written them. And he's just immediately, the music that he started putting out, he's doing guitar riffs on a keyboard, you know, and he's really amazing at this, and he's so good at adapting himself to whatever style that even Arnie doesn't remember exactly which riffs he wrote anymore. He doesn't, but Arnie would send Demi riffs just at certain tempos. He would send Demi just guitar riffs, nothing more. And then Demi would take these riffs and just fill them in with drum grooves, bass lines, orchestration, and then he would separate the parts he was given and then add passages of his own and just make these complete songs out of riffs that Arnie would send. Sometimes he creates his own riffs, and that's the stuff where Arnie's like, I don't remember if I wrote that or not. And so yeah, that's how we did it, just over the distance, and then Demi would just send the stuff to me, and I would just either accept it or reject it or put it aside. And yeah, I have maybe 200 different compositions I could have chosen for this album, and I didn't pick what I picked because like some songs were good and some songs were bad. It was more about picking the songs that created the kind of album that I want to make. And so I'm always looking for certain ingredients once we start choosing songs, and then we get a collection of songs, and then I start to think, okay, now we need something really fast. And so if Demi sends me a jazz song or a slow song or an acoustic song, no matter how beautiful and wonderful it is, I'll just reject it because I'm looking for something. Yeah. Or reverse that if I'm looking for an acoustic one. So who knows what sort of gems I passed up, And we might not even know because now we're writing the next album, but we're not looking back into our old rejected music. We're making new stuff.
But it took unbelievable more than 25 years for you to write your first concept story. Could you explain us the concept behind the album a little more? It's in the promo. It says it's about a man who dreams always a dream from a dream and another dream and something like that.
Well, the main character is a rock star who's a drug addict and who's really rich and who's basically missed his whole life because of his own excess. And even his friends and his family, the people who he's supposed to be close to, he's neglected. And the people who are supposed to be his friends are probably only using him, and that's kind of what he finds out at the end. But he has a drug overdose, and he slips into he falls asleep, and he starts to dream, starts to have a nightmare. And then he wakes up from the nightmare to a familiar place, but then the reality distorts and you realize that he's still dreaming. And every time he wakes up from one dream, he's into the next dream where the story continues forward. But there's a continuity in all these dreams that he's actually going somewhere. He starts out in his hotel room or his home. I didn't really decide. I never really wrote where he is when he begins. But he knows in the morning he's got an important engagement. He's got to be somewhere, but he can't remember where it is. He's too in euphoria, but he knows it's important. And there's a train ticket on the table, and he's thinking about where he's got to go in the morning. So he slips into this dream, these nightmares. And at the end of this first song, you hear an alarm clock, and then we take you to the train station, and then from the train station we take you on a taxi ride to the house, into the house, and through the house. So it's, as each dream ends, it's going to the next dream, which is the next kind of chapter in the story, and this house is his destination, and in this house is where he finds out what is really happening to him. By the last song, it makes it clear.
You said you were already writing the next Shadow Theory album. Will it also be a concept story?
Yeah.
Will you continue the story?
No. Different, yeah. What we want to do is we want to create something we call rock cinema, or cinematic metal, if we have to be metal, We'll let people tag us whatever they want. Well, it won't matter because we're going to be in the prog genre anyway.
Yeah. You're stuck there.
But yeah, I'm kind of like the black sheep of prog rock, prog metal, because I guess the one thing that always separates me from my contemporaries is that whether it's Psychotic Walt or Dead Soul Tribe or the Shadow Theory especially, it's quite a bit darker than most of the prog stuff. But the thing we want to do is that we're making the music like the score to the story, and the vocals are kind of like the picture, and the picture you have in your own mind, a story that is continuous, and music that gives it some sort of epic film score flavor within the metal genre. And so we know this is going to be our thing. And the next story I already have. Actually, I had this story ever since we finished Into the Everflow. I had this story. And I started writing it way back then. I was even trying to do it orchestrally and had written a bunch of music. But the story was very big. It's very big, and it's a very ambitious story. And I couldn't do it in Psychotic Waltz because I have to somehow plan it all out You know, the music has to be appropriate for the chapters of the story and whatnot. So the lyrics have to come first, and then the music has to be scored to the story, which is the opposite of what we did with the first album. So now that I have really a vehicle which I can really realize this story with somebody like Demi, who can really make this grand orchestral textures, that I think now it's time to bring this story out.
A lot of people are wondering if you will bring the Shadow Theory on tour, if you will play live. We all know you have Psychotic Waltz running again. We all know Johan is very busy with Threshold. Chris has his things running, Anne with Complex 7 and so. So is there a possibility that we will see you live in 2011? Or maybe 2012?
I hope so. I hope so, because, you know, part of my grand scheme of things was picking guys that were very strong at performing. And to have this band together on stage would be pretty phenomenal, I would imagine. And it's something that yeah, I'd love to do it. And it is a matter of, first of all, if the opportunities come to us. Second of all, if everybody is available when these opportunities do come. Yeah, so far it seems pretty good. I mean, we already have been given one offer, which we had to decline. And it was Chris is the one that had to decline it. We actually got offered to headline the Fused Festival in England, and Threshold is headlining just the day before. So I knew that Johan would be there. I said, Johan, just stay another day and you can headline
2 days.
This festival in 2 different bands 2 times. And yeah, he was good for it, and everybody else was good for it. But Chris said he can't do it because not because he's playing, but because his wife is playing, and she's out touring. So Chris has to look after his children, and so we had to turn that one down. But actually, for me, that's okay, because I would rather bring this band out. If we have a tour, then we can make it viable to come together for a few days before this tour and really kind of work the set out. And if we were to do this gig in England, we would just have to show up and do it. And we never played together before, not all at once, you know. And so that would have been a little terrifying anyway. So
thank you much for your time, and hopefully we will see the Shadow Theory out there somewhere, somehow.
let's hope so.